do I think NFTs have concepts that are absolutely potential keys to unlocking yourself in whatever the metaverse is going to develop into looking like? Abso-fucking-lutely. It gives you...
Welcome back to another episode of Bopcast, where I interview outliers who are breaking the mold regardless of the status quo. Today, I have somebody who fits this mold exactly. His name is Julian Dorey, and this is part 2 of the 2-part series of episodes that I'm bringing you with him. As you heard last episode, our power went out when we were recording the first version of this, so we ended up recording another 2 hours. I cut out some of the parts in the beginning that overlapped, and I left the rest of the meat of the conversation. This one is super intense. I'm really glad that we dove into crypto, NFTs, Web3, so if you're interested in any of that, we touch on that as well, and various other topics, because Julian is just a wealth of information on these type of topics. I really hope that you enjoy last episode and this episode today, so without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with my friend Julian Dorey.
3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bopcast. Today on the show, I have my guy, Julian Dorey. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. There's a very fast deja vu happening right now.
There is. For people that don't know, we were recording for about 90 minutes and the electricity in the entire place went out, so we're taking this from the top.
We're taking it from the top, man, but hey, that's the game. We're in media. This is what happens when you don't have a proper... You think your backup is backed up, but it's not even a backup. Your backup didn't even work.
I thought you were fucking with me when I came back upstairs. Like, it's gone. I'm
hope
like, yeah,
that
it's funny.
I was... Dude, I wish I was fucking with you, man, but before we go into your story, I just want to, since we're here, this is absolutely impossible. But if you could just sit down with people, no cameras, no mics, whatever. Like, do you enjoy that? You must enjoy that conversation now.
Oh, yes. That I love. Yeah. That, because that's what I did. That was my job, as I said, encompassed a little bit of everything. But going out there and meeting people, just spending time around New York City, getting yourself into crazy situations, learning about what's actually out there, learning where the world's really going when you do that.
Are there any notable situations that you could speak on, or... If not, no worries. We'll keep going.
Yeah, I remember there's one I like. There's plenty of them, but there's one I thought was just really symbolic. I got tight through Mitch and Mike. I got tight with a guy who was one of the earliest people to cryptocurrency. He was fucking mining Bitcoin in 2011, 2010 in his dorm room. He was, at 22, he ran the first global blockchain project for IBM. You know, he had the guy who invented Java working for him on the team. Crazy shit. And like the most unassuming, low-key dude with a personality too. Like he wasn't like some coder, like a full package in that way. Quiet and relaxed kind of guy. And Sloan Breakville is his name. Good friend to this day. Great guy. But when I started meeting with him, he was... I don't want to get into the full thing, but he really got fucked over during the 2018 bear market. For people that weren't involved or don't know what was going on in crypto back then, there was a big thing with ICOs, especially like through Ethereum and stuff like that, where companies would have tokens to run them, and it became the way that you went public with a blockchain idea. And unfortunately, like anything else, craze, rush to money, bull market, you know, everyone ran to the market and they were selling shit. And so guys who had legitimate visions like Sloan got fucked. You know, because they were just looped in with everyone else. And he had a business partner who, nice guy, but he got hooked up with him. The guy was not a tech guy, and he was a talker. He was a sales guy, right? And in fairness to him, like, it should have been like a yin and yang, right? But when there were a couple things that went wrong during the bear market, where some poor decisions were made, and so I got connected with Sloan when he had to take over the whole thing. And he didn't want that. He didn't want to, he's like, I just want to build, right? I don't want to be the CEO, like all this shit. He was like, he was the co-founder and he got to be on the building side, let John worry about business. And so I talk business with everyone. That's like one of my strengths. I understood, again, who did what, why, and who talked to who and why, making connections, understanding that. So it was natural to get connected with him. And, you know, he was like, kind of almost ask him, he's like such a humble dude. He's like, almost asking my advice on some stuff straight up. And I'm like, do you know what you're doing? Like, what you're in the middle of? Like, why the fuck are you know what I mean? Like, why are you even asking me about that? But I appreciate the relationship. And so I remember walking into a conference with him. He's like, hey, I got one in Midtown, because he had offices in San Francisco and Manhattan. And so when he'd be in Manhattan, he's like, I'm going to a low-key conference with some big insiders. And he didn't say it like that, of course. But he's like, I'm going to this conference or whatever. On Friday, I want you to come in and come with me. I'm like, okay. So I go with him, and there were a bunch of people there who effectively built this space. Like, they were the early, brilliant people who said, fuck it, with like Silicon Valley, all due respect, they got enough, we're going to go right to crypto, and we see where this is going. And mind you, this is like September, October 2018. We're getting near the bottom of where the fucking market was. And I went in there, listened to a bunch of these guys talk. It was a low-key type event, maybe 100, 150 people there in one of the skyscrapers in New York. And we're walking back from the conference to his offices, maybe a couple miles away afterwards. And I just realized, I'm like, holy fuck, this is happening. Like, this, my whole world, I use this example because my whole world is the legacy banking system. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? We're not even allowed to talk about Bitcoin to our clients. I just went in there with a bunch of people who are a billion times smarter than anyone I work with. And I'm not even, that's not even disrespecting people I work with, right? Like other teams who worked around me and stuff. It's like, these people are some of the smartest people on planet Earth. They're all in a room in the biggest metropolitan area, like incognito, during a time where no one's, the word crypto is a joke at this point. And there wasn't even a stutter in what they said. There was no, they were impervious to what was going on outside. They were just fucking building. And I'm like, okay, something's happening. Like I was very interested in crypto, and I was not one of these people who abandoned it when it went down. Like I remained very like, no, I think there's really something here. But that was like a huge eye opener where I'm saying to myself, you better bet on this space because the talent is going there.
Do you think there is an overhype of it? Are you happy with how crypto is portrayed and used and bought and sold at this point, and coming from seeing some of the first people use it and how they built it and what they did? Do you think now it's, and I'm projecting my own views, on a pedestal, so to say, like, what are your thoughts on the current state of, there's no doubt that it's been, if it hasn't been overhyped, it's been hyped, you know?
Oh, yeah. So, number one, it depends what aspect of crypto you're talking about. Let's use NFTs as an example. I'll throw a generalizing percentage on it, but you need to assume 90% of NFTs are complete and utter criminal bullshit. Like literally. Like what Ty Lopez did the other day with his top line stuff. I guess it's not criminal, but maybe it's...
Can you speak on that at all? I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, like he was like... he joined the NFT space and was selling shit for like 17 ETH, like, sit down and have a beer with me. Or like, I went through my bookcase and found some old pencils or shit. You'll get that by buying this. Like, and it's fucking disgusting. Now, is it criminal? Maybe not, because being honest about everything. People
you don't have to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People buy it. That's their problem. Yeah. But like, will you see grifter ass bullshit like that? Yes, you will. Will you see people you've never heard of get big for doing fucking nothing, but like something happens where they become a meme or you know, they just kind of like what they say, like they rug people? Yes, you're going to see that. You need to look at things and assume bullshit. But like, I use the NFT example because do I think NFTs have concepts that are absolutely potential keys to unlocking yourself in whatever the metaverse is going to develop into looking like? Abso-fucking-lutely. It gives you access. That's half the reason.
Wait, can we talk? Let's get basic then.
Yeah.
Do you think metaverse is gonna catch on? Like what? In what way will it access to things on the metaverse? You're saying I'm trying to go as basic as possible here because
yes.
For me, okay,
Smart.
Let me lay down foundations of where I'm at.
Yeah,
Bitcoin, listen, I'm not a massive Peter Schiff fan. I know you probably know who he is. He has his thoughts.
I don't like Peter Schiff.
Yeah, he has his thoughts on Bitcoin. I watch a Peter Schiff podcast and I watch a pro Bitcoin podcast. I try to stay.
No, that's good.
Right?
That's great.
Exactly. But that's how my brain works. Okay? I don't, the quote unquote the downsides that I see, I don't like. But I'm comparing them to things I know already. So I'm comparing them to stocks and things like that, and being able to invest your money in a company a stock that's backed by a company, etc.
Let's keep this simple. Before we get carried away. First of all, yes. I love how you put that, because by the way, I have listened to Peter Schiff on podcasts. I don't know that I've ever listened to his show, but I have listened to him.
No, I've never listened to his show either.
And I don't like him because I think he's a grifter grifting off of taking attention by being such a ridiculous bear on the entire thing and being a boomer. I think he's...
So you're saying he might not even have those opinions on Bitcoin itself. It's just a part of his strategy kind of overall.
Yeah, I'll bet he does have a lot of those opinions, though, because I think he repeats it to himself so much that he believes it.
Yeah.
But, I like people who are legitimate, like, not attention whoring bears, even if I disagree with them, because, by the way, I can't stand like Bitcoin maxis. I hate that shit. The people who, once you become trapped into an ideology, which, let's get it straight, whether it's money or however you look at it, shit's an ideology. Once you get trapped by that and you will not see it any other way or accept any questioning of that, you are now a hostage.
Can I run something by you? Let me see if you think this is how you feel about this. Okay, so part of his argument or conversation, whatever, is that people who own Bitcoin need Bitcoin to go up. If Bitcoin going down doesn't help them. Is that true?
People who own that's the dumbest argument of all time. People who own dollars need dollars to be able to not go down, at the very least. They need dollars to continue to have value.
But they're not telling
you
you to buy more things so their dollars don't go down.
Because what they do is they inflate your currency behind the scenes and basically give you taxation without you looking at it that they also don't get because they inflate the currency, right?
But it's not let's push aside the whataboutism and let's just, what is that? Wouldn't it make sense for people to have Bitcoin and they need you to believe in Bitcoin so more people invest in Bitcoin? I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying.
No, I understand exactly
they would need it they would need more people to buy into it, correct?
What he's saying is absolutely correct in this facet. Yes, you need adoption. 1,000%. Yes. And unfortunately for him, anything, not just money, anything needs adoption. If Instagram were created and no one fucking went on it, no one would fucking care. Anything needs that. So it's a bullshit argument. But where he has validity is questioning the fact that you are doing things outside of the purview of governments, which he doesn't like governments that much. He doesn't have to agree with that, but he can make that point, and he should. It is a question I always raise, because if governments suddenly don't have control of money, what do they control? How do they control shit? Like, if I'm a government, you think I like Bitcoin? I fucking hate it. Which I think is horrible. I think that you should take a look in the mirror and realize what you're really about.
Let's go back to principles then, because the point of Bitcoin, the problem they're trying to solve is a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. We have many problems, but the overall control of money, I guess you could call it, right? Being able to. And listen, I think we have it wrong with the printing money, I think, as well. I think a lot of people are just like, printing money is so bad, but all these other countries have the US dollar as their main currency, which means not all the money stays here. Am I stupid? You can verify this. You're like no finance stuff. So, but that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of headlines of like inflation is at like, yes, I just think there's more nuance to it than yes. We look at, if you're in the United States, you look at it as a United States point of view, right? But our money is everywhere, man. And same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, you can be, unless China bans it and tries to mine, you probably know this. You probably have looked into this way more than I have. Why do they do that? Why don't they ban it and then have all the things to mine it? I don't know. But there's more to it than, and listen, I appreciate the Peter Schiff perspective, and I think that it's a good one. I think, listen, I'm not trying to push my stuff on you listening, but if you have a pro Bitcoin. I think you should, not that you should do an anti Bitcoin. I think you should
agree.
do a full scope.
I agree with you 1,000%. He's just one guy who is such.
And he's the only example I have. Though.
I could be wrong. There's other guys. There's plenty of other guys out there. Like even Lloyd Blankfein, you know, ex-Goldman CEO, Mr. fucking traditional finance. He was the CEO during the financial crisis. Goldman started to get behind it, so he was getting behind it, and he sent out a tweet the other day questioning some things, which is like flip-flappity-flooping. But I don't have the tweet in front of me, so I will fuck it up if I try to remember it. But I was reading it, and I was like, actually, Tret, if you could possibly pull that up.
Who's that again?
Look at Lloyd Blankfein's Twitter. It's within the last 3 to 4 days. But when I was reading it, I was like, fair. You need that. You need that. Even if it's coming from him, you need that questioning right there. And he's not a guy tweeting about crypto every day and profiting off of it. He doesn't have his kid tweeting back at him calling dad an idiot because he's not buying Bitcoin almost to draw attention to the shifts. I just think he's a shill. I really do. And I could be wrong. If he were wrong and I sat across from him, like I have someone I won't call him a friend, someone I know who is friends with Peter Schiff. I've never talked with him about Peter Schiff, but that person who very much holds the opposite opinion of Peter on that, if he told me that he doesn't think it was that way at all and that I'm completely wrong and cited good evidence, I'd be down to have a conversation. But sure. I just don't. He's a guy who has. He's dug. He's a product of at least ideology. He's dug in. He will not see it any other way. You know, I don't. There's another guy, for example, Jared Dillian. Phenomenal legacy finance guy who has a lot of questions around Bitcoin. His Twitter is at Daily Dirtnap. He has one of the best daily newsletters on the street. He's not a huge believer in Bitcoin, and he comes at it from a little bit of like a boomery perspective, but he is to the point. He is very black and white with stuff, and he is consistent on that across the board. So I don't have to agree with Jared on everything, nor should I with anybody. There's so much shit out there. So, like, I like that. And I appreciate when he puts out thoughts as to why, because, like, he's a behavioral finance guy. I like when he questions Bitcoin because it makes me think and go, whoa, could there be an issue there? Like, that's a great example of a guy who I will use as and I don't know if it's fair to call him a full anti-Bitcoiner, but he's probably much more against it than he is for it. I like that.
Yeah, and I
like to review.
I think where I come from too is just not. I've day traded before, just as an example. Oh, we have the tweet.
Is that the one? Yeah. Is that the right one?
Yeah, exactly. So this is from Lloyd Blankfein a few days ago. Thanks, Tret. Yep. Keeping an open mind about crypto, but given the inflating U.S. dollar and the stark reminder that governments can and will, under certain circumstances, freeze accounts and block payments, wouldn't you think crypto would be having a moment right now? Not seeing it in the price so far, ... So he leaves open the door that we could see something, and he makes a valid point that, yeah, you haven't seen ETH and Bitcoin and some of the main ones up, while shit is, I mean, you've seen tyrannical shit in Canada. You've seen Russia get shut off from the world, and my issue is that he's only looking at price, which is not always reflective of what's going on. So, like, as an example, there's a chart that tracks percentage of holders or number of holders around the world who hold over 1,000 Bitcoin. Last week, I don't know if you could pull up this chart because it's really exact, but I'll tell you what happened. Last week, when the sanctions started kicking in, this chart that looks like this, if you're watching and not listening, I'm moving my hand in kind of an up and down regular. What's that math term where they have like the loops like that?
Oh, dude.
Regular, like repeating parabolas, right? That's not the term. There's a certain...
It better be, because that's the only one we got,
it's right? Like on the calculator, like cosine or sine or some shit like that.
No, I know what you're saying.
The sinusoidal curve. I'm going to get it way fucking wrong. But whatever that is, right? That's how it looks over 1, 2, 3 years. Last week, boo! Straight through the roof. Whoa. And it increased about 185 people. 1,000 Bitcoin minimum, which is like at the time when I looked at it, it was like 38 million, which means they probably own a lot more than 1,000 too. Don't you think it's kind of interesting that there's roughly of what we really consider, say, 200 to 250 oligarchs in Russia? And roughly from what we consider last week when they were shut down, they had, they're trying to get all their yachts. They're shutting down the SWIFT payment system. They're being blamed for part of this whole conflict. Isn't it kind of interesting that the 1,000 Bitcoin holders went up in a straight line right at around the same time? I look at shit like that and I say, well, the price hasn't reflected it yet. The price hasn't reflected it. But if that's not turning towards some form of adoption, and by the way, if you think they're only doing it in Bitcoin, you're out of your mind. If you don't think these guys are washing it in like ETH or some shit, of course they are.
Well, is that a big factor of people being able to wash like a lot of money through these things?
Yeah, and here's another thing. A common big government, anti-crypto argument is it's a tool for money laundering and criminality. Yeah, well, what the fuck is the dollar used for?
All money laundering
Yes.
ever was existed.
And I got a guy.
The mattress firm is the funniest one. You know about that one though, right?
The mattress firm?
Mattress firms. Trent, you know what I'm talking about?
I do know about that. I do know about that.
I don't know about that.
So maybe Trent, you might be able to find the original. It had to be years and years ago. All right, but here's the gist of it before we can find it. So there was like a street, and there was like 10 mattress firms on this street.
This is like straight Saul Goodman shit.
Straight Saul, dude. Straight. So this is Breaking Bad.
Let me show you how to launder money.
Yeah.
If this is all your money.
All right. So we're gonna get a mattress firm. But they're like, oh, why is there 4 mattress firms in a mile or half a mile, right? And so they were using a mattress firm.
Are we going to stop car companies because Hamas has been the biggest funder of cocaine sales around the world for the last fucking 2 decades by funneling cars through America and through Mexico and back around, smuggling cocaine and then cash back in them? No, we're not going to stop car companies because of that.
We're not going to stop Toyota for selling Toyotas to, Al Qaeda or whoever.
Yeah, exactly. You can't control everything.
Yes.
And so when I look at that, it's a shitty argument to have. And also, and this is an argument against crypto perhaps, but I don't know how much I should say. Let's just say I know somebody right now who has a major project coming out, let's say in like November, who is going to be discussing the trackability, did a full international investigation of it, the trackability of Bitcoin, and the fact that it is very traceable. The government can and has figured out who has Bitcoin or who made certain transactions. So that, again, that's kind of an argument against some of the crypto space, but it's an argument directly against that whole money laundering thing. If the government sees some shit going on and they want to figure out where it is, guess what? They can, and they have.
Are you in crypto?
What do you mean in crypto?
Do you own crypto?
Yes, I do. But I'm very... Also, I was talking about NFTs earlier before we got off it, but like same with crypto. Crypto, we're talking about legit, like what's supposed to be money. I assume 99.999999999% of it is utter and complete bullshit. Like I own 2 things. I own Bitcoin and I own ETH. And my confidence interval on ETH is not as high as it is on Bitcoin. I look at some of that as a much higher risk than Bitcoin. And if people have arguments against ETH, just as I am against Bitcoin, but even more so against ETH, I'm all ears to that. Because I'm like, I doubt it. I have a lot of doubts about it too. You should have doubts. You shouldn't assume that Amazon exists today. You should assume you're looking at pets.com possibly. Doesn't mean you're in the wrong space. The tech space was right in 1995. The internet tech space was right, but you could have the wrong horse. I don't even have that, even as much as I believe in Bitcoin and the fact that it was the first and it's truly decentralized in that we don't know who started it and no one controls it as of now. I still have questions and I still will take those questions and I'll piss off some of my Bitcoin friends when I do it, but I will never stop. The minute you start saying it's infallible, it's over. Like you have completely given yourself up to an ideology.
Yeah, there's I didn't even know we were going to go into Bitcoin, man.
Yeah.
I've read a little bit, but I just don't. I haven't done, when I try to speak on something, I really try to go in, and I haven't done enough personal research. So that's why it's really nice to talk to you about it. Do you see it as, and this will wrap up our Bitcoin conversation, but is it in the way that you look at it, say personally, if you can speak on this, you own Bitcoin. Is that a full, like, just long-term, like, hey, I believe in Bitcoin? Like, do you own it like you might own an IRA or some kind of long-term investment or a life insurance or something?
Yes, but it's not infallible. It's not like, I don't look at it and say, Julian, that can't go to zero. It can.
But the mindset. It's about the mindset of I have it. It's a habit of having it.
Yes. It's also partially, there is a part of it, I've said this before, is a statement. And I also want to say, I'm not a Bitcoin expert. Let's make that crystal fucking clear. I do my research on it. I talk with people way smarter than me. I listen to other people who I don't know, way smarter than me, including people who are against it, like Jared Dillian. And I draw my conclusions where I can, but I'm not going to sit here and there's plenty of shit I don't know, which is part of the reason why I don't have the full expectation like, yo, we're good. We're rising here. I will say that one thing that would crash Bitcoin, where I'll actually agree with Dan Pena, who I think is out of his fucking mind. About Dan Pena? Don't get me started on Dan Pena, fucking guy.
Next podcast.
One thing I will say is that when he, and he's one guy who said this, plenty of people have said this, but when he says the day they figure out who Satoshi is, it goes to zero, I agree. If that information is too heavy. You are talking about something that is potentially replacing the global financial system in its underlying value, right? I'm not somebody who's at the point where, Bitcoin's going to be the currency. I think it's more the sun. It's like gold on steroids and HGH. Could be, with things like the Lightning Network, maybe one day it does become the currency too. I haven't seen a good enough argument there yet. A lot of Bitcoiners would hate me for saying that, but it's true. I think something's more likely to be built below Bitcoin that's somehow earmarked off of it, like baseline to it. But when Dan Pena says if we discovered who Satoshi was, it goes to fucking zero.
What does that mean, Satoshi?
Satoshi Nakamoto is the guy who, the pseudonymous person or persons who invented Bitcoin on October 1st, 2008. No one knows who he or they or she is. But if that information came out, it's too heavy. It's like, imagine if, like, we think someone like Bezos running Amazon is too heavy, right? We think that's like crazy that he oversees the global supply chain almost of like basic needs. Now imagine money. Human beings couldn't. It'd be the biggest secret in the history of secrets. It is the biggest secret.
Yeah, but I think most people don't know that. We don't actually know who started it. I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, but I don't fucking know.
It wouldn't matter. All the people who are in it would know that. And there's a lot of people who are aware of that.
I bet there's people in it that don't know.
Most people who are in it know that.
Yeah, they do have a certain level of research.
And the fact that Peter Schiff, obviously, at least in all the times you've listened, hasn't really discussed that is pretty telling.
Yeah, and we do know who invented Ethereum. And I will reference this podcast.
Yes.
It's with Tim Ferriss, Naval Ravikant, and the guy, I don't know his name. Vitalik, who invented Ethereum.
Buterin, yeah. Very
great podcast. I will say, did I understand it? No, I didn't really get. I mean, I really tried, but I will say they did premise it with, "Hey, you probably do have to understand this to an extent." They said it in much better wording than I just said it, but obviously Tim Ferriss is an orator, and he's very good at podcasting. But so they said, "Hey, listen, you might have to have a baseline understanding of this to really take value from this conversation." So if this conversation is more baseline than that, then I'm doing what I'd like to do, which is just ask my own questions about it, because I really have no idea. I'm somebody from the outside, and you have, like, there's levels to this, like anything. You know a certain amount about it, and then you go to these other people who know way more than you, but you can understand them.
You're making a great anti-crypto point here that I make as well, and I will continue to make it until I see it rectified, and that is one of the biggest problems crypto continues to have. It is better than it was, much better than it was in 2018, but they have a long way to go, is the complexity. People don't buy complex. People buy simple. People bought an iPod for the first time because it had one button in the middle that was your core button, and it had, I think, like 2 or 3 others behind it or around it that were like a play button, a backward, and a forward, right? And everything was 2 clicks away. And it was a white thing right in front of you with a blank space screen. They later bought an iPhone because it was the internet, a phone, and a camera all in one. And all you had to do was, the home button unlocks it, you slide it, you're open, and boom, these little squares are different spaces, and you can add as many or as few as you want. Simple. Steve Jobs used to say if he made a microwave, it would have one button. Add 30 seconds. That's all you need. Simplicity is the hardest thing to get to because everyone always wants to cover every base and they want to have options. But people don't really want options. They want something that's great, that solves their problem for them, that they can just inherently understand. So I ask people, I'm like, if tomorrow we had to go to Bitcoin for whatever reason and nothing else existed, do I think my grandma's fucked? Yes, I do. Is that good? No, it's not.
Why would you adopt something you don't understand?
Exactly. They need to do Bitcoin has done the best job of anyone, but there's still a long way to go. There needs to be a simple way that someone picks up the phone and boom, they understand it. This is what it is, period. ETH is awful with that. I don't know what the fuck way is. You know, like I don't use it enough, right?
I've spent probably a few hours trying to understand what blockchain is.
And that's another thing, and people overuse the fuck out of that word. But they need to make it palatable. They need to make it such that, like, when Silicon Valley launched and all these companies came up, what happened is they formed a great relationship between the engineering and the marketing. The engineering created wild shit. The marketing figured out how to take it to the people and message it, right? You can't only have one. Crypto is still way too heavy on the engineering, and they're not effective enough on the marketing. Too much of the marketing is in something like NFTs, where it involves selling a product.
Yeah, but the problem with marketing is that it has to be dumb most of the time. Like, it has to be dumbed down and simplified.
Yes, so that's exactly what I want.
How the fuck do you market something that's complex?
You make it simpler.
Yeah, and it's always easier to make it more complex.
Yes,
dude. This does not relate too much, but you familiar with Amway?
Yes.
Familiar with network marketing?
Yes.
So, I talk to a lot of these network marketing guys, you know.
Pyramid schemers?
Yeah, schemers. Mm-hmm. Hey, guys, if it's a pyramid scheme and you're making money, do your thing. If you're not fucking anybody over, I'm not trying to throw shade on the model. I'm just saying, if I was a network marketer, do you know what I would do? Do you know how I would make more than all you guys chatting up people in Walmart supplement sections? Is I would literally just tell you what it is. Because the thing about that is nobody said, hey, here's Amway. It's a pyramid scheme. This is how it works. I'm going to do supplements that you have in your house already. You just don't have to go to Walmart and buy them. We're going to ship them right to you. We have energy drinks that's bad. Like, I would just literally just be like, this is it, dude. And you can do that. If somebody does that, honestly, I'll be honest, I'm trying to do it for podcasting right now. But if somebody could do that for Bitcoin, man, like, I'll fucking watch your shit every day. I don't even need to care about Bitcoin. If you can put something in a simple, like, I love these guys who, I made $100 million. Let me tell you how I did it. But they tell you just simple terms. For step one, I found a skill. Step two, I bought back some of my time and learned a higher value skill. Like, if you can simplify this shit and you have a system, people will grab onto that, you know?
Yeah, I maybe we can transition a little bit to something we were talking about in our first podcast that got deleted because you just brought it up from another angle. It's 100% right. But I asked you if you could name one company who, yes, they have their haters, but their haters are pretty much only just the worst of the mainstream media who can't stand the fact that this company is impervious to fucking having fanboys and stuff. If I could name one company, if you could name one company, what would that be?
Think about it.
Well, you already named it earlier.
I know. I'm just, if they want to think about it, they don't have to give it to them right away.
Okay. Let's not bury the lead.
No, it's Tesla.
Right. Why?
Because Elon doesn't care.
Exactly. Elon Musk will tweet out, basic bitch tweets at 2 a.m. because he feels like it. He will say things that are ridiculous and considered insane in some cases, like, oh, our stock price is too high. He will go straight on Joe Rogan and smoke weed and not give one fuck about it. He will make comments publicly on a camera because he feels like it that says, no, we don't really want to do that. We'll do this instead. He will do all these things that none of these even successful major corporate companies will do when they just hide behind statements, that are written out by a PR department who has 12 employees and 12 ladders down actually writing it, getting it back to them, choosing words carefully and making it sound something that's damage control. It's not gain. It's not worry about long term. It's like, what are we going to do that's going to cause the least damage for the next 3 months or next month, whatever it is, to get to our next quarterly. So
Vanilla-ism.
Yes, your word with vanilla-ism. Like, that is radical transparency. In the media, in like something that's light, like comedy, that people can't even take as fucking comedy anymore. That's why someone like Dave Portnoy's so uncancelable, because even when it is literally embarrassing, he tells you what happened. Like, he'll share DMs of him talking with some chick about pussy and astrology, right? Like, because he's like, well, this is what happened. It doesn't make me look good, but this is what happened. And so people see the fact that he's human. There's flaws. They make mistakes. They don't hide behind some statement and try to double speak corporate speak about how shit's going down. Yeah. And so your example with like Amway, I tell you exactly what it is. Yeah. Like I talked about this when we were talking earlier, but I'm going to tell it again if it's cool, because
100% anything.
It's a great example. But there was a show that was on when I was, maybe I really can't remember. Maybe it was like right after I was born or something, but it was in the 90s, late 90s, and maybe like early 2000s, called The West Wing. And it was an idealistic version of what the Oval Office and the presidency would be like, right? So it's not realistic. But this was prior to the social media era. It was prior to the instantaneous sharing everything era. And one thing that Aaron Ross Sorkin, the writer and creator of that show, nailed down was the importance of radical transparency. He saw the future with that shit in a way that I can't ever understate. And there was one scene in particular, I think I watched the show on like Netflix when I was in college, but it's from the first or second season where the president in the show, Jed Bartlett, is played by Martin Sheen, is at a press conference, and something just happened to the effect of he signed a bill to get something very important done that he had promised on the campaign trail. And in making the bill, in typical Washington bullshit, he had to give something up. And so he had to give up something that was much lower on his priorities, but was something that he had promised the opposite of. Like, no, we're not going to give that up on the campaign trail. So he's in a press conference, and some lady in the media gets up, angry because it's like an issue she cares about, and she says something to the effect of, Mr. President, what would you signed this bill that did X, Y, and Z, but you basically fucked over these people who you just spoke to on the campaign trail a year ago and said you were going to do this, and now you did the opposite. What do you have to say to them? And without hesitation, he looked right at her and he said, I'd say I screwed them. I screwed you. And she's like, what? And everyone gets quiet. And he goes into this 1-minute rant about, to the people who I said that to, I made that promise. We can go roll the tape on all my times doing it. And I fucked you. I went in there today and I did the opposite. And if you never want to vote for me again and you want to speak out against what a piece of shit I am, you have every right to do that, because frankly, I gave you the firepower to do that today in my actions. There's no running from it. That's what it is. I did screw you. However, I had to make a decision on the list of importance of things that were promised, and it's the shitty part about Washington, D.C. And I basically could get the thing that was number 3 on my list today, and frankly, and this is probably true, that other issue I gave up on was number 100. And so number 3 was more important, and I made the trade-off, and it's something I had to do. And again, if that makes you hate me, I understand that and I accept that. It was radical honesty. And so if you're someone at home who got fucked by whatever he gave up, if it's the only thing you really care about, yeah, you're probably never going to vote for him again. But maybe you don't think he's a total piece of shit. You're like, well, at least he was honest, but fuck him. Mm-hmm. Most likely, though, you're someone who cares about other things too that may be on his priority list, and you go, you know what? That sucks. But he's honest. He's honest. Right? And so that's why guys like Elon and guys like Dave, who go straight to the people, and talk, a guy like Joe Rogan, he's in podcasting, right? But that's what he does, whether it's dumb or smart. Like, he says what he thinks, and it's a long conversation. There's no hiding, right? Nope. That gets rewarded. And the people who exist in the legacy structure of government and corporation and the way things are done can't fucking stand it. Yeah, because it's like, no, we decide what goes. This is how it's done, so that's how it should be done. And in reality, if you just are fucking honest with people, and people know if you're full of shit or not. They can tell over time. If you're just honest with people, I'm not saying you can go out and just be wrong every day and say, hey, guess what? Here's what we did. We fucked you. Sorry. And then do the same thing the next day and people are going to be okay with it. I'm saying, like, over time, you can make mistakes or do a misstep or make a hard decision that sucks for certain people. And if you are just repeatedly going out there with where you stand at all times, and you do it in a way that makes you sound like a fucking human, and just like you're sitting in their room with them, talking with them, over a beer, they're probably going to like you more than hate you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that what Joe Rogan experienced recently, I don't know if anybody asked you, but people would ask me, and they're like, what do you think? Is he, like, even my client, one of my clients, he's my friend too, I just had him on the podcast, he was like, what do you think? Is he going to get canceled or whatever? I'm like, I've been here for a long time. Like, no. But I know that's impossible. But I kind of look at that like, you don't, and also, so here's the other side of it too. You said legacy media. You're optimizing for views, right? You don't really get, if mass media is podcasting. Mass media is Joe Rogan. That's, if you want to talk views, right? I'm not talking money. Ad revenue.
Yeah,
I'm talking
no.
views.
Yeah.
That's mass media. If mass is quantity of views, it would be something like his show compared to a news network.
CNN and Fox News are irrelevant.
If you take somebody down, which you really can't, because then Spotify, this gets into specifics and I won't go there, but it's not like the audience disappears. Like if Joe, I wish, I love Spotify's great. Like I said, I'm an artist. I know the nuances. I know there's good, there's bad. It is what it is. But if Joe offered for $10 a month, $15, honestly, I really, to a point, don't really care how much it was. Everything on his website, no ads, dude. I don't need to listen on Spotify or watch it on Spotify. You know, I'm just dedicated. I don't care where he would have to go. You can't cancel him from his own website. And now there's Google. I watched the episode with your friend who knows a lot, who got fired from Google, and great story, by the way. I'll link it in the show notes. But obviously, you can't cancel somebody from their own platform, you know? And so I think that's a lot of what these, like you said, old guard, sure, it's the media, all these corporations. Things are changing, man. I mean, the future,
I hate it.
Independent journalism now is much easier. Now, does it, and we've mentioned this before, does it also do the Gary V's encourage people who make shitty content to make more shitty content? For sure. Content that shouldn't be out there? Maybe, for sure. But it also encourages things like this, which is independent journalism, which that's just a term you can use to describe it. But I think that a lot of it's changing, and it happens to be the biggest platform in the world is the independent platform.
Yeah, and they hate it because they can't control, just like they hate Bitcoin, just like they hate crypto. It is a threat to them. Like they want to do I don't want to go back deep into that, but they want to do all these CBDCs, just toss that in there, because now, it's going to be their digital currency, and they're going to use the legacy systems to get rid of all the points of what decentralized digital currency is supposed to be. You know, so there's always an angle for the powerful structures, but you know, we also have two ideologies who are stuck in the middle of this, and generalization here in fairness, but the wide majority, in my opinion, they're just wrong. I look at Republicans, I look at Democrats, and I'm like, God damn, you guys are so far apart, and there's every other thing out of your mouths. I'm like, no, that's not what this is, because you're, depending on how you look at it, like it's 0 or 100. No one wants to go 50 miles an hour. You know, this country's built on going 50 miles an hour, diligently and carefully, brick by brick. You know, you win the Revolutionary War at the earliest, where you could say, we were the quote-unquote world power. The earliest would have been right after World War I. That's 140 years later, you know, and I would say it's really after World War II. 160 years later. Brick by brick, slowly, carefully, let the world develop, let technology develop, continue to figure out your place, figure out what's do we want to be an imperialist empire? Okay, maybe not, you know, and you still have mistakes in there and everything, but you figure out how to grow society through intellectual capital, through freedom, through diversity, through all these different things, and you got yourself in that position. Now, what comes up apparently in the laws of everything in life must come down. So how do you come down off that? You come down off that by going to an extreme position. And so, you know, you look at the White House in my lifetime. I was born while Clinton was president, right? Like, it's been left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And every time it happens, it gets, especially since Bush, it gets farther and farther apart to where it's so stark. And you also have more and more mass communication while this is going on. I'll independent journalism, but also independent fucking tweeters out there, bots and shit as well, to just continually be like, motherfucker, to everyone who doesn't agree with you. And so the more we allow ourselves to become trapped in an ideological system based on who we vote for, and I'm not someone who votes. I've voted left and I've voted right in my life. I've been both, and I'm firmly neither at this point. But in order to get down to that point as to what the vast majority do at the ballot box, we create these teams that distracts from the real problems. People who are Democrats and people who are Republicans in average society, your average person, have the same problems. They've allowed themselves to accept the propaganda of the people who are really causing the problems, to convince them that the other people on their level, the other common Joes who thinks in a different way, are the problem, and not the people who have been at the top of the food structure causing all this shit to come down. I mean, one of the greatest examples in like the Bitcoin quote unquote example, and again, like, let's use the term crypto more than anything, like, because again, Bitcoin could not be the thing, right? Like, someone said, yo, it's going to go to zero one day. I'd say, I can't say it's not going to, right? But you look at that space. When did that white paper come out? When was it created effectively? October 1st, 2008. What happened 2 weeks before that? The whole fucking financial system crashed. Trust in the system was dead. It was the worst time since the Great Depression. People's wealth gap, the wealth gap of people like across the country and the world, had been going in a V shape since the 1980s, and now it diverted almost into like a flat shape, like day by day. Do I think it's a coincidence that something that represented giving power back into people's wallets and the decisions they're able to make with the value of their money, giving it to the people and taking it away from governments, do I think that it is a coincidence that was created right around the time the fucking markets all crashed? No, it's not. There aren't a lot of major coincidences like that in the world. And so you see these movements where people are starting to realize that, and my hope is that these same movements don't get sucked into ideological structures, which is unfortunately a difficult thing to work against. Like, we have to figure out how we can work together to recognize what makes us the same versus recognizing what makes us different. Like, if you look at 2016 and that election, what the people who should have been the two final candidates were Trump and Sanders, right? According to the fact, I think the DNC is...
They fucked Bernie.
I think the DNC is far smarter and effective than the RNC, which is... None of this is a compliment towards anything. And they wanted Hillary, and they were able to put her in there. Exactly. But Bernie was the guy who had the movement. Despite them giving him no attention, he built it himself. And Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were products of Occupy Wall Street and Tea Party, which happened in 2010, 2011, 2012. With Occupy Wall Street, I'm generalizing, it tended to be urban younger people who were upset at the system that left them behind. They had $100,000 of college debt, couldn't get a job with their gender studies major that they were told was going to be so great, and they were pissed off that all the Wall Street bankers, none of them went to jail, and they're all there making all their fucking money, and they're not. Tea Party are all the middle America people who have watched Wall Street and everyone else send all the corporate systems, send all their jobs overseas. They've been left behind. They don't have the technology out there as far as like Silicon Valley's in California, right? They don't have these companies building there. So their skills are being automated away, and they've been left behind. And they just happen to be a little older and a little more rural. So Occupy decides to take more of the leftward tilt on solutions. Tea Party takes the more rightward tilt on solutions. Yeah. And so they convince themselves that they're each other's enemy. And what rises out of that? Two guys who the only thing they have in common on a solutions end is they have, not even a solutions end, is they have different forms of a New York accent. But you have Sanders and you have Trump, and they had opposite ideas on what the solutions were, but they spoke to the same fucking person, and no one realized it. And so that should have been a moment where we said, wait a fucking second. Forget our differences here and how we want to go about fixing this. We all have the same complaints. Why can't we come together and figure out, like, okay, we don't need to agree on all the solutions, but what are like a general set of things that like we should focus on, like an issue, and then allow legislation to take its course?
Yeah, but the come together doesn't
exist.
No, but the come together, the problem with the come together, it's not all of us come together. It's one person and another person come together.
Yeah.
I don't want to hype up our format, but if there's anything that allows you to have two sides, that allows two sides to come together in an honest and meaningful way where both can hear each other out, it's got to be a conversation.
Agreed.
Because it's not going to happen. We know that it's not going to happen with hundreds or thousands of people. It's just but that's not a conversation. That's a crowd, right?
And that's the issue. It's a group thing. It goes right back to the corporation thing. It becomes a group thing. Like, I had a problem with corporations and the way that, especially at banks, they operated where everything was red taped. Yeah. It's because one guy has one job. One woman has one job, right? And there's a list of things they're supposed to do. They report to person X, and they worry about their field.
And it's not in what Ray Dalio says, an idea meritocracy, right? Yeah. The best ideas win. Listen, I have a business. I have people that work for me. I'm really, like, I think about this on a daily basis. This is something I spend a lot of time invested in and thinking about, how to not have almost founderism, which is everything. Everybody that works for me is a tentacle off of me, right? And they can only do what I know how to do. And I'm not saying that's a whole separate problem, but even in a mass corporation, it's not the best ideas win. It's the person above you's ideas win.
And that might even be a generalization, but I'm going to take it because it's far more true.
Sure, it's
far more true than it's false. You're right. You're dead on. And so, like, you look at the structure of what that is, it comes down to self-preservation. The easiest way to self-preserve is to do what the crowd, the groupthink, wants you to do, such that you do not upset the apple cart. Why do people not come out and blow the whistle on things when they are wrong? Why did it take 11 years for Edward Snowden to happen? Because the other people who maybe wanted to do it before him realized, I'm fucked. Maybe I get killed. I don't know. I don't need to go that far. But, like, I'm fucked if I do that. If you, like, one of my least favorite arguments on that is when people who worked in the government come out and say, you know, he could have gone and told people about it. You don't think other people didn't try or didn't think of that? What the fuck do you think he could have walked into the sea? Can you imagine this? Like, at this point, he was an NSA contractor. He literally wasn't even working at the NSA. Could you imagine him walking in like Chief Hayden? Hey, Mr. Hayden. I don't know if he was in charge at that time. Hey, General Hayden, sir. How are you? Snowden? Ed? Yeah. You know me. I work down there. Listen, I found this whole stellar wind type thing, and I think it's against the Constitution, and we should stop it. So can we do the right thing and hold a press conference and tell people how we've been violating every fucking thing in the Constitution against them for the last 11 years for a couple terrorists in the middle of fucking Siberia? Right? Like, can we go out and do that? Yeah. What do you think? Hayden's going to sit there and say, you know what, Ed? Pop up a seat. Let's get a camera out. Let's talk to the people. Of course he's not. In the worst scenario, if the government's this big bad thing that the worst people want you to think it is, and I'm not sure it is, but, like, you know, he gets killed. In the best scenario, he gets sent to a desk somewhere until he's so sick of it after 3 years of not seeing the sun that he quits and goes off into the private sector and throws up a middle finger and is never heard from again because he signed something that said, I can't ever tell anyone about this. So when you see people like that, they are going outside of the groupthink structure just to be able to do the right thing. Think about how many other people don't ever get to do that and how many issues there are, not just in governments, but in corporations, in big sections where you are incentivized not to say what the crowd doesn't say. And social media has created a 24/7 crowd. Mm-hmm. God forbid you say the wrong thing and question something or say, like, hey, I agree with that. You can even start with that. I agree with what we're thinking about this, but can we also think about this? When we think about that, you're canceled. Yeah. Right? Like, look at all the people talking about Ukraine right now. Anyone who's like pro-Russia or like doesn't think this is horrible, what's happening to Ukraine, is a fucking moron. A lot of people aren't saying that, though. Mm-hmm. There are people who are simply saying, this is awful. We're seeing innocent civilians bombed every day. I do wish we had the same energy about, like, all the brown people in the Middle East who have had this happen, including at our hands, by the way, like, every day for, like, decades and decades, but we don't.
Killing people with video games.
Exactly. Either way, let's ignore that for a second. Yes, it's awful what's happening. Yes, I think the guy Zelensky's awesome. I think it's amazing that, like, he didn't take the whole out key and stayed there and said, well, I guess they're gonna have to kill me. It's amazing, and, like, I wanna see them not be taken over and everything. But you now have very aware politicians and people in the government taking advantage of the crowd sympathy for Ukraine and getting a bunch of people to hold marches where they're advocating for no-fly zones. And you now have a public support forming for people who don't even know what the fuck a no-fly zone is. And what they don't realize is that they're openly advocating for World War III. Because if we do that, that is an act of war. Shit, you have to enforce a no-fly zone. So if you say, no planes over Ukraine, Russia flies a plane over Ukraine, can you just let that fly? No, you shoot it the fuck down. And so people are afraid to say that because they're going to be called a pro-Putinist and like, you, how dare you, if we lose but one more life in Ukraine, it's the worst thing ever. I don't want to lose any lives in Ukraine. I think it's disgusting. I think Putin should be put on trial for war. I mean, ideally, he'd be taken out. But I also understand this is a world power who's doing this. And unfortunately in life, it's not so simple as, oh, well, let's just make a no-fly zone and tell him to go fuck himself. I don't want to see any Ukrainians die. I don't want to see millions of more people die from other countries as well when it's avoidable. So, like, you now have people who are being silent on that because I'm just some douchebag saying it on a podcast. I'm not a general. I'm not somebody in the government who can actually affect this conversation. But you have people who are thinking that, but they're not saying it because they're not incentivized to say it because the group is saying differently. And fucking General McFuckface is going on NBC Sunday Morning saying, oh, let's do a no-fly zone. Or like, oh, we need to think about a no-fly zone. Better yet, they start with that kind of language and then they get to, you got to do it. And now, boom, what happens? We slip farther and farther down the slope. And what do you know? A month from now, we're sitting here in fucking World War III. Congratulations.
I don't even watch the news, so I really don't. I just see people post about all this.
That's what matters.
Is it? I mean, I when it's on, when I see it, when the TV's on, I put on Fox and I put on CNN, put on MSNBC. I try to watch all of them. I watch Tucker Carlson, and then I honestly don't know the people's names on CNN. I just know he's a face, and then I watch them, and so. You know, I try to. I
always start with Don Lemon, man. That's my
Don
go-to.
Lemon.
It's my go-to on the news.
I know that.
Start with him, and it's downhill from there. Because by the way, that's not an advocation for Don Lemon. I think he's horrible.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, they're all horrible, man.
Listen, I want to take a slight left turn in the instance of time. This is a personal question that I had just looking at going a little bit deeper and just looking at what you did before and what you're doing now and the podcast that you've built. Do you think there's something deeper into why you knew that you wanted to switch trajectories, but you literally went out and did, which is arguably, if you don't know about podcasting, it's one of the hardest things that you can do to actually create something that is successful. It's just exactly like business. It's the same exact statistics. Only 10% make it in the first year, and then you can just
less in podcasting.
It's less in podcasting.
Dumbest thing you can do is start a podcast.
100%, and I agree. Right?
Yeah.
Was there like an unmet need that you needed to get yourself and be? Sorry for those listening. You needed to get yourself out there and kind of be maybe a lack of creativity. A lack of use of creativity in your. I really get the sense that you did enjoy what you did before that, so I don't think it's anything that you missed out on. But I'm trying to find and this is super personal. This is just something. This is something that popped up in my head from doing this for 4 years and helping other people do it, and seeing people just slip right into it and almost be perfect for it, and other people struggle. Is there something that when you were in this, banking job, you enjoyed what you were doing, but you knew, okay, this isn't, I can't commit for another 5 years. Was it any deeper than that? Like, why the podcast? Was it inside of you? You're like, I wish I could just get myself out there in an open forum? Or
no, not at all, man. And to be clear, I did not enjoy what I did last. The only aspect of it that I enjoyed was the one fun part, which was going on and having an excuse to know who everyone was and why they were doing it. But in reality, how many people, and this is any business, how many people when you do that are you actually going to end up doing business with? 1%, maybe.
Run the numbers.
And
you can run the numbers.
It's a numbers game, and it's like, well, once someone's not doing business with you, you don't talk to them anymore. I never followed this rule. I made friends. I didn't make friends to do business. I made friends because I fuck with this person, and I wouldn't stop. And that was kind of an issue because they're like, well, why are you spending time around so and so? You're not going to be doing business with him. You already know that. Yeah, but I fuck with him. He's doing some wild shit. I want to know about that. Do you think I was going to make Sloan Breakville, who I think on this podcast, or maybe the one we lost? But do you think, was it the one lost or was it on this one?
No, I think it was the last one.
Yeah, I think it was the one.
The one we lost?
I think so.
I don't remember. But, a guy like Sloan, who was one of the first guys to he was one of the first people in blockchain period. Do you think he was going to be a client of a legacy bank? Are you out of your fucking mind? He didn't even own US dollars. He literally had all his assets in Bitcoin. We weren't even allowed to hold that. So I shouldn't have been spending any time around Sloan, but I did because like I saw what he was doing. So like I hated that they discouraged that.
It happened to me too. They said make a LinkedIn account and message these people. I'll buy you premium, and you just message them directly.
Yeah.
And I was like, what about like?
Which is a business model. It's fair.
Oh, 100%.
It's fair.
I have an entire business based off of LinkedIn, but I don't have to message. Like I do message people, but it's not built on that.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I liked that. That was one piece of the job. I didn't like all the other shit.
But you like the relationship side of it, not the quantity.
Not the doing the job. I was good at it.
Yeah,
I could build portfolios. I was very good at financial plan. Well, I don't know. I'll let clients speak for that. Who knows? Maybe I sucked at it. But like I enjoyed being like feeling like I did a good job. But like I don't fucking like that, you know? And I started to realize that. Like, am I really going to be doing this? And so when I said no to him with his offer, again, I'm not sure what was said on here or the other one, but when he came in the offer with me late summer 2019, and then I was like,
the person you were working for.
Yeah. I was trying to shift industries, and I was trying to shift towards like something general, marketing, cut my teeth, right? I had done a lot of that on the side. That means nothing, right? So my resume might look good as like a resume. I don't know. But it didn't look good for anything I was looking at. So I knew that right away without even applying for a job, which is why some of the recruiters, I reached out to like some very senior people who were like own firms and somehow got some of them to talk to me. And I appreciate that to this day. They had no reason to talk to me, but they liked me because I didn't have any expectations. They're like, usually we got to tell people right now, hey, your resume looks great for that, but not for this, you know, and then like got to set it. But I was like, guys, I will literally take a job for like $35K in New York and prove myself. I do not give a fuck, right? And so they're like, oh, cool. That opens some doors now. Now we can talk. And so even with that on the job trial, I'd still get my ass kicked, not because people were dicks or anything, but like they have a life and they got priorities and shit, and they don't want to figure out where I fit because they can't tell. They got other people who are sending in resumes where they worked in shit like this, where they did specific shit for this in college, and then they see a banker and they're like, all right, we don't
No, if it wasn't perfect, then it was
exactly
work.
So I was trying to get across industries, and then I finally started to get some feet in the door February 2020, and then the pandemic hit. So I did some media work in January, and I was trying to figure out what the fuck am I going to do. And it involved like some interviewing, and I was at an event to do it, and at the end of doing a couple interviews in front of, I didn't even realize it, but like 40 people who were just out there watching late at night, at the end people were coming up to me left and right like, bro, do you have a podcast? And I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with a podcast? No, I don't have a podcast. Like, get the fuck out of here. But they kept on saying it, and they weren't the first people who had said this in the past, but for some reason, it was the day Kobe Bryant died. I was feeling a certain type of way. It had been a weird day. And I drove home. It was like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive home. And I drove home in silence. My life was in flux. I had had a lot of ass kicking on the job trail at this point. And I was just like, fuck it. I have no plan. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I need to learn this shit. I know nothing about a studio, but I need to like be able to build something like that. So I'll make it a side hobby and start figuring it out. And I would do that late at night and on the weekends over the next month and a half. And about a week before quarantine, I hit the enter button on ordering, I guess, like 80% of what would be the equipment. And so then the market is taking a shit. Everything's happening day to day. I'm still working. So, like, you know, we're in DEFCON 5 mode. I forget that I did that. And so day
like
one...
legitimately forget?
Legitimately forget.
Okay.
Legitimately forget I ordered everything because, like, the world was a shit show in the week leading up to that. And so the first day of quarantine, March 13th, that Friday the 13th, I get a notification, your Amazon delivery's downstairs, and I'm like, oh, fuck. I go down, I get all these boxes like a jerk off. I put them on my couch, open them up, and I'm like, what the this was the, of all the shit you've done, Julian, I've done some dumb shit. I'm like, this is the dumbest fucking thing you have ever done in your, what the fuck are you going to do with this? And then I just kind of looked at it, and I realized all my jobs that I had made headway in finally, they all dried up that day. They were gone. because the pandemic was hitting. And I was like, that's a sign. Like, this is really stupid, but fuck it. And I just never thought about it. And so my lease ended during this whole time. I came back home to South Jersey. So I was living up by New York and North Jersey. And I just kind of started building. And I just got consumed with it. And just, there is so much I thought about in setting it all up that was so detail-oriented, it's sickening. But I'm very glad I got so caught up in that I didn't think enough about everything that could go wrong, because I could have, like any other human being, talked myself out of it, and I just never did that. And my idea was like, oh, I just wanted to talk with people and get different perspectives. What was I good at in my last job, and what did I enjoy? Getting out there and talking with people and building relationships. Now I'll just do it on a camera. What sucks is I always wanted to be the guy behind closed doors who no one fucking knows about, making deals. Like, that was my idea in college. I'm like, well, that's going to be hard because I'm on camera now. Like, that's kind of impossible. And so, again, that was something I just compartmentalized and didn't think about, because I would talk myself out of doing it. Like, fuck that. I don't want anyone to know who I am. And I'm not, I'm a small podcast right now, but the idea that, like, some people know who I am is, if I sit there and think about that alone, it gets weird, because I'm like, that's just not my style. But, in the modern day world, I guess there are some things you can still do behind closed doors. Certainly some jobs like that, but that doesn't overlap with what I'm passionate about. And so I guess you have to accept the fact that, like, yeah, you do a podcast, some people are, if you're actually successful, some people are going to know who you are, and you just got to live with that. But no, wasn't this grand plan of like, I'm going to do this and people are going to know my name because I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z. I was like, ideally, every guest I had, and I knew this wasn't going to happen, would just be someone who I just started off and they started going and people could hear what they say and judge for themselves.
What do you think I'm doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you're active. You're talking. That's how a conversation works. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's the same way in what I do. And then sometimes I'll have a podcast where someone basically, I don't know what's going to happen, but they come in and they interview me. And then I got to talk most of the time. And you better be okay with that, So I kind of fell into it in a lot of ways. And I guess I'm good at having conversations with people because of my life training. I'll leave that up to other people to decide. But that's all it was. I'm like, well, maybe if I wear a hat at all times on camera, if I ever get big, I can walk into a Wawa without a hat and people won't know who the fuck I am. Like, that's kind of my saving solace with the whole thing, but who knows? I don't know.
Is there anything that you've taken from this podcasting experience that, I mean, I assume it's probably multiple things, but is there anything that stands out to you that you had no idea was going to happen, or a realization that you had before this?
Everything I ever figured out in it. If you would have told me a year ago, when I was 6-7 months in and already making short form content, if you would have told me a year ago your entire marketing and awareness of this podcast on the audio and then even on video is going to be run through short form content online, and that short form content is going to be, say, like 30 or 45 second clips that are going to take you a minimum of 15 hours and sometimes as much as 30 or 35 hours, I would have laughed my ass off at you and said, get the fuck out of here. But that's where we are. Like, and that's one example. There's a million things you figure out along the way. You also get better at your craft. You do it over and over. Now I've talked on camera with people for 300 hours or something like that. That's not a ton, but it's a good amount. Those are all 3-hour sessions too. It's not like 20 minutes here and there. Yeah. So you're constantly finding new things. You're constantly finding better ways. I couldn't have told you 90% of the shit that I'm at right now, but I did set up basic things. I got the basic controllable things right away that had nothing to do with me or anyone else who was sitting in my seat. It was just the stuff like the production and the quality, right? And then it's up, the rest of the quality is, are you any good? I guess I had to figure that out. But the stuff that was at least the first day one in your control that you could have correct, I think I checked those boxes because I didn't focus on anything else. That's all I was worried about. And then the rest of it was just being natural. And, you know, you're going to get me, for better or worse. There's a lot of negative to me, I'm sure, but, like, it's honest.
And how often do you release?
Once a week, always.
Guaranteed?
Yeah, I've never missed a week.
So you're at every week for 89 weeks or whatever you're at right now?
Yeah, I had launched 10 episodes to start all at once. Because I had...
What do you mean, on one day?
Yeah, when I launched the podcast, I put out 10 because I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna have to do like 30 episodes solos until people are gonna agree to come in here, which I hate solo podcasts.
You think, yeah, but and then now it's like you have as many people as you want to come in there. Yeah.
To my surprise, when I released the 10, 2 of them were actually guest podcasts. One of them was my cousin, who we had been making music in there throughout the summer, so she was already there, and I just rolled the cameras one day, so that didn't really count as far as like getting someone to come in. But the other one was someone, my friend Terrence Jones, who did a phenomenal job. And I'm like, well, maybe that'll at least plant the idea in people's heads. The minute I dropped, though, I had like people who I respect a lot hit me up like, yo, I will come in. And I was like, whoa. So I had already plotted out, like, I think I even filmed like 3 of the next 4 that were solos. So I put those out, and then immediately at episode 16 went to guest. I did, episode 15 was requested by people, so I did something that they asked for, which was like, who the fuck are you?
So let me stop you. At episode 15 or 16, what's the audience looking like? Is it just your Instagram?
Oh, there's nobody. Dude, there's nobody.
Okay.
You have 25 people, right?
Yep.
And I'm saying, when I say people were asking for it, I'm saying like 10 people were asking for it, of which I guess like probably 6 or 7 of them I knew previously.
Did you gain it traction before the TikTok and the clips
No.
and all that? So
Nope.
was it stagnant? Like,
That's the thing.
And what episode? Like when?
Episode 16, I got someone to come in, and I never looked back. The only time I've ever had to do a solo episode since then was in November. I got COVID for 2 weeks, and I don't miss a week.
I did a solo because I had somebody. No, and by the way, this is completely fine, but it was actually my fault. I didn't send them the episode, and then once I was like, "Hey, it's going out," and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And then I couldn't release it. So another never happened to me in 3.5 years.
I don't ever agree to that. No one can get sent the episode before.
And
you come in there, you sign the release. That's it. It's out. You know, and that maybe that's something you can take moving.
No,
forward.
I have the release now. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, dude. I was being nice.
Right, and no, I think that was the right thing to do if someone asked.
And,
but
because I don't want somebody
I
having
never,
their stuff out there that doesn't want it.
I never had that happen. Luckily, I guess, knock on wood. And you know, I got guests over and over, but I didn't get an audience until April. That was the first time I hit an audience.
April
because
of this to our last year
of 2021.
Got it.
Because I started making short clips in mid to late February 2021. I started to
TikTok.
Yeah.
Cool.
TikTok only.
How'd you know? How'd you watching YouTube videos? Did you call somebody? Did you have
No,
a
I
consultant
just
or
started
anything?
making them.
Yep.
I've never had someone touch.
You're just like, all right, they have to be vertical.
No one's ever clicked a button on my podcast. That's not me. But I did market research, you know, and I was like, well, what works? And that includes like bullshit skit videos. Why do people stay on this? And now I look at
that shit's hard, dude. I've tried to make funny skits.
It's hard. It's very hard. Now I look back at stuff, and I can't even, like, I would never in a million years put it out, including stuff once I went to split screen video, like stuff I put out that went viral in August. I would never dream of putting that out today. It was awful, right? Compared to what I now know. Yes. You're always going to be like that, though. So, like, that's when I started to build an audience. And then once I hit YouTube in late November, early December, where they started to take my content, that was a game changer. That sent a lot of people to Apple, Spotify, and it built an audience on YouTube for the first time.
Was it obvious that quality was important to you early?
1,000%.
Because that seems like the main principle that you started with. So, but I think a lot of people don't take. I think they take the approach of, hey, you get what you get. Like, this is what I can do.
No. Nope.
You were into and all around, in my opinion, and you have to listen. You have to agree to yourself. Not that you have to listen to 3 hours at one time, but you have to at least sit down for like 30 to 60 minutes to really start getting into this conversation. And so some people can't go there. And that's no fault of their own.
Yeah, that's a separate conversation.
For sure, 100%.
You're going after a certain segment.
Yes. But when you have 3 hours, people can just look and it says 3 hours. But there's a lot of work that goes into creating conversation, making sure, knowing the guest, doing your intimate
There's a lot of work that goes into
research. So the
anything.
quality, I get the point I'm trying to make here, saying too many words, is that the quality isn't just your clips. It isn't just your full form video.
Right.
It isn't just your audio.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Yes, and that's critical. I want.
But where did that come from though? The quality thing. I'm
a believer in great work. I'm a perfectionist. I have OCD for sure.
Good. It helps in this business. I'll say
it does.
Yes.
And it's like, if it ain't right, it ain't right.
Yeah.
Even if no one knows it's not right, I know it's not right.
But the problem is too, if it isn't right, and then you can't figure out how to make it right, then it's like it might as well not exist. It's like.
That's a problem. Yeah. People can get so caught up in stuff that they're not willing to try things. There's a difference that you can't do.
Did you find yourself in those situations?
No. When I get into those situations where I'm starting to lean that way, boop, I hit the enter button and I make sure I can't stay there. Yeah. And I put something out, and I'm like, sink or swim.
So it's like music, man. Every song is 80% done. Like there's no 100%. There's 100% that because you agree that this is 100%.
The content you put out today, if you're at the top of your game, you will find something wrong with it 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. Michael Jordan could watch tape of himself in 1993, watching it in 1997, and be like, I would never do that today. Yeah. It's just a product of constantly getting better at things, and that's all I look to do. And so, like, yeah, I am very respectful of people's time. When they are in a feed, if they are holding a phone where they see a short clip, they have a trigger finger. It's about that far from the screen. If you're looking,
and the
right
phone
there.
knows where your finger is.
All right, and your thumb is right above the screen, and it takes maybe about 0.1 or 0.2 seconds to get to screen and flip and flick. And unlike a YouTube video or some sort of mid-form video where they click and decide they're going to watch this, so they've already invested based on the title, thumbnail, whatever it is. With a short feed, whether it be TikTok or YouTube Shorts or even an Instagram
billboard,
feed,
it's just there.
It's a billboard. It's just there. They didn't pick it. It's based on their interests of what they're most likely to engage with. Yep. They probably have never seen you before if you're not big, and you have a quarter second to get their attention in some way. And every time you spend a quarter second, the long enough time for their brain to be like, oh, I'm getting bored, boop, they hit that trigger, and that hurts you when they hit that trigger. So I make my content through the lens of not just what I find out works, which I'm constantly finding new things that work, but how do I keep them completely hooked in a way that they go, even if they weren't interested in the clip itself, they're like, what the fuck is this? You know, and then it's up to them if they want to make a choice. I assumed my funnel was going to be 0.00001 funnel from checking out short clip to an actual clip, or 3 zeros, not 4. But either way, very small number.
And you're trying to drive them to an audio play or a video play.
Now it's just whatever they want.
Yes.
For a while, it was just audio from TikTok, but I would drive them to YouTube so they'd have to go to audio, where it says I'm on Spotify and Apple anyway, so they could see there was a full production behind it.
Well, now let me ask you this. Okay, so you're on this. Listen, man, I think you have these clips pretty dialed. You have some pretty you have videos where I show people your videos and they say, yeah, I saw that already. That's crazy. Cool. The 10 million, the one with 10 million or whatever on TikTok. Yeah. And these are people who really understand the production too. And also people who did not become fans. And it's because they just saw the video, one video, and that was it, or at least not in the first.
I assume that's 99.999% of people.
Marketing, it takes 7 touch points, etc.
Exactly.
So they'll find something that they like. But what are you doing now, and what's next? Is this just continue to make these clips? Is there anything on your mind currently in terms of podcast world? And I'm going for people listening. I know this is a little bit of my world, but
I know the people. I don't need to get into that whole thing right now. I know the types of people who listen to this podcast, and I know, and they're across a spectrum as well, like in how they think and stuff. You know, I take a lot of pride in that. I have people from across ideologies who come in and listen. I particularly resonate, though, with the people who are true centrists or fuck this, type scenarios and aren't so much tethered to one side or the other. But yeah, do I have people who lean left and people who lean right who listen? Sure. But what those people have in common is they like the conversation and they appreciate hearing different perspectives. And so there's way more to it than that. But I know who the types of people who are going to want to hear this are, and now it's a matter of just continuing to find ways to reach them where it gets to the point where they can't not check it out anymore. So my favorite DMs or comments I get are from people like, yo, I saw your shit a while ago, and I don't check out stuff when I see it, but like I'd keep seeing your shorts, and I finally checked it out, and yo, your pod is fire. And I hear something like that, and I'm like, oh, there's that 6 touch point thing. Like, that's what it is. So my matter is figuring out how I'm, like, it's not just, you can't think like, oh, I want to get views. That's a huge mistake. You need to think, why does someone want to see this? And then, yes, you should get views out of that. It's one of my favorite comments from, like, the fucking jerk off, like, people out there who just
Your comment section is entertainment, by the way.
Oh, it's so I love all the I love, it's usually like 75% negative. I love that shit. But my favorite ones are when people are like, you're just trying to get views, and I'm like, yes. No, hold on a minute. At the end of the day, 1,000, you're trying to rip me saying that comment. 1,000%, that's what I'm trying to do. You show me a content creator who goes out there and says, you know what, I want to make some content that I want it, and they're trying to make it, I want to get the least amount of views possible. Or you know what, I want to get less views for sure. You show me that person, and I will show you a fucking liar. You should be, the whole concept of getting views is you did something right. You gave people utility. Besides the people who put up something horrible that they get trolled for online and get shared everywhere, so people can come in and hate.
Bullshit.
Yes. Besides
we can put these outliers to the side.
Right. But you did something that provoked thought, and if you do it on a consistent basis, it means you're making good shit. And so yes, when I have periods where I do lower views, it's because I suck, and that's how we're gonna fix that, and we're gonna fix it by people getting views because I don't suck anymore. Like that, comments like that are hilarious, and they're also a huge help. I appreciate them because they add to engagement. Love that. But like, you constantly have to be adjusting. And like, if you're gonna put out public content, it's a conversation that I seem to be having all the time, where people are talking about this, like, yo, how do you deal with the negative shit? I'm like, I love that shit. And they're like, why? And I said, I'm like, it's engagement.
Yeah, but I talk to these people.
It means,
I don't know who they think they are, but I just have conversations with these people.
Dude, it's like, that's all I do.
They convert to listeners.
I'll send exactly. I'll send
like
them
most of them become like fans. They follow
exactly.
me.
It's
amazing.
Like, for whatever reason,
they think you're not going to respond, dude.
Exactly. They think you're like insecure or something, like they
like
are.
You're in a glass house or something.
Yeah, they put it out there, and I'm like, all right, man, yeah, bet. Like, I'll turn around people all the time, like, yo, can you send me? They'll rip me for like an opinion someone had, like me or a guest. I'll be like, yo, actually, I'd love to read that paper. Can you send that? And I'll at least go scan it. And then they're like, they'll convert sometimes.
Yes.
And like, I'll say
honesty.
Yeah, exactly. The people who like rip you with like awful words and shit like that, I send them hearts. I say like, you're a light upon this world. I love that shit. But there is a real problem with content creators who take that shit personally. They gotta stop. These people aren't real. I mean, honestly, like half of them.
Your clip, Julian, isn't real. It's clipped and created. It's not. It's an amalgamation of something that happened in reality that was then put into a video and audio form to make you feel a certain way and take an action. So you're judging that based on
I would say it is real because it's taken from something that happened.
For sure. But I'm saying, like, they're judging you. They're trying to judge, like, your, like, opinions based on a 37-second thing.
Yes, that's
it's
what
not.
you're getting at.
It's social media as a whole, and I won't go into the whole thing itself, but it's people judge their true feelings on people's created realities.
Yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate it. I want to stay with the overall point you had the front there. You are, especially in short content, you have to accept the fact that you are dumbing down the issue to 30 seconds. Yeah. Good luck not being taken out of context on that. I build that in. Yeah. And I assume, I'm like, yo, if enough people can see my intention, even if they wildly disagree when they see it, we're in business.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have haters, you don't have lovers.
But
right?
I think you should. I think the goal, and yeah, like you said, content creators don't, like people at least who start. I'm not looking for the 80%. I'm looking for the 20 or less. I'm creating for the 20 or less, or the 10 or less. I just, like, I need, like, the point is to segment. Like, if you don't like this, then that's good. Like, you don't need to like it. I'm doing it for people who do feel something about it.
Right, and I don't want to. I'm not one of these guys who likes to trade on pissing people off. We don't do that. I haven't had on, knock on wood, any guests who really do that. We have conversations, and they happen over 3 hours, and I take it down and I put it into a little clip. So, like, we do our best. If I miss, I miss, and I'll say, yeah, I think I missed, or like, oh, you changed my mind, you know. And that happens all the time. We have put a emphasis on ripping people for changing their mind. Now, you want to rip Andrew Yang for fucking jumping to the next green grass every 5 seconds after he loses again? Fair. He does that all the the guy's a proverbial loser at this point, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think he's a grifter. That's different. When we are talking about people who just, they are presented with better evidence, they acknowledge that and they say, yeah, you know what? I think this now. Here's why. That's different. We should celebrate that. That's happened all that. You know how much shit I've been wrong about, or even my guests have been wrong about on my podcast?
I appreciate your corrections.
Holy shit, man. We once defended Andrew Cuomo for like a half hour on my podcast. You can go run the tape, episode 17.
We've never made a fucking correction.
Fucking hilarious. Right? Like, if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Yep.
But like 100%. That's what makes it open and human.
Yeah, but you're not going in saying I'm right. That's the thing.
Yeah,
and people would judge you thinking that you think you're right. I don't believe what I said.
I don't know.
I might tell you about what I said today that I was wrong yesterday. Okay.
I try to, if I can remember, it was said different. And there's some things I'm sure I don't remember that are smaller or whatever. But like, if I'm like, hey, I think we said this differently, I'll point it out and I'll try to hit the photographic memory and figure out exactly which episode and what spot it was at, and if I can remember that, I'll say it. You know, like, you're not, goddamn, we have such an issue with people thinking they got to be right about everything or they should be right about everything. That is a losing proposition. We are all fucked up humans and we get shit wrong all the time, even when we try our best to get it right. If you are out there speaking about things that are happening in real time, like I've given takes on the whole Ukraine situation tonight, you better be prepared to be wrong about shit. Maybe what I said about no-fly zones will be a disastrous take. I don't think it will be. That one I feel somewhat strongly about with good evidence. But could be wrong, right? Like, and if it's wrong, like, I'm going to tell you, I once advocated for no-fly zones. But it is what it is, you know. I appreciate the engagement of it a lot, and it makes me better, too. It makes me know what people are like they hate. Or like where I do have something wrong, and then I'm like, oh shit, there's like 1,000 people commenting this, they're right about that. Like, there is one episode I have that's a more popular episode where I'd say 90% of people, 85-90% of people love it, but I was self-conscious about one thing, and I was right to be self-conscious about it for nitpickers, and they're right, where there was basically an issue with like me repeating myself on the front end of the episode, and I knew it going in, and so when they called me on it in the comments and there was an army of people, I would send them full responses back, yo, you're absolutely right, here's why, and cite them all the evidence, and they'd be like, well, what? And I'd be like, no, here's why it happened, doesn't make it right, I'm going to try to avoid that in the future, but I agree with you.
You want me to give you a crazy one?
What's that?
I had a friend of mine on this podcast. He's a DJ, his name's DJ Brian Conklin, and he passed away a couple years ago, and he did an episode with me, because I met him in a college class. He was just eccentric dude. Like, you need to get him on a podcast. Like, one of those people you meet in reality and you go, I don't care what we're going to talk about, just be on this podcast, you know? Right. So I have him on the podcast early on, episode 8, 9, whatever. I was not good at this. And I don't claim to be good at it now. And so we were talking, we had plans to do the podcast like a few months later. Like a month after he passed, that's when we were planning on doing it. So my first guest ever texted me and told me, hey, Brian passed tragically in a car accident.
Jesus.
And so, you know, his family reached out to, you know, they're like, thank you for the podcast. And I said, listen, that channel's not going anywhere. It's always on YouTube, you know, like, you don't got to go, like, don't worry about it. Download it like it's yours, you know. And his aunt, his brother, sister, whatever. There's people in the comments telling me criticizing me about the interview. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what it is or what the weight of the situation is. You know, like, all I said back was, hey, I'm sorry. Like, yeah. I tried the best I could. So, and I'm sorry to bring it on that. I'm sorry to take it there. But it is an example of, like, I just don't, I don't blame these people.
Yeah, they didn't know the context of that. And
no, but these are people that knew him that then listened to the episode.
Oh, they did, and then they still said that.
This is people that knew him were wanted to. I posted a clip. It got thousands of views. His mom shared it. Everybody shared it because I wanted to pull a clip from the episode because I did a whole dedication to him. And then people who knew him listened to that, watched it on YouTube, and then made points about how I didn't let him talk and how I wasn't a good interviewer. And I said, I agree. Like, this was episode 9. Like, this is 2 years later. Like, it's different now, you know? But in that context, it made me realize that it doesn't matter how you can't be there's nothing
You're
you can't
gonna
be
get shit wrong.
Yeah, you're gonna
and
get
you
shit wrong.
better-
If you're doing it in this format, you're gonna get it wrong.
Any format.
Any format.
Any format.
True.
You're going to get shit wrong, and you better be able to be very honest about what those things are. You have to have a crazy good in anything, crazy good bullshit meter of what's real and what's not. You will have people, if you listen to every point of criticism and tried to change it, go jump off a bridge, because it's not possible. It means there are going to be strengths that other people, they don't like that, and they want it to be different. Like someone who says, yo, can you make this podcast 20 minutes? They can go fuck themselves. I'll do it for them. You know what I mean? Like, no disrespect, but like,
There's other people that
you're
will.
not my target audience. You're never gonna be. I don't give one fuck about you.
Yeah, agreed.
That's what it
Me
is.
too.
Whereas someone who comes in like that interview I was talking about and says, "Yo, you were repeating yourself in that first hour like crazy." They're 1,000% right. That was one I was already thinking about. But there's other examples of stuff where I didn't even think of it, and people come in and then I look at it and I'm like, motherfucker. They're right.
As hard as it is sometimes, don't you think that it's a great self-awareness tool?
Oh no, I don't think it's that hard. I think the minute you start thinking your product's great, it's over. I operate every day as if I have 0 listeners and I suck dick at this.
But if you stop operating that way, that's when
Agreed.
the pillow, you're on like a cushion now.
There's a quote from, I think Hagler said it, the great fighter. He's like, it's really hard to get up and train at 4 a.m. in silk pajamas when you're sleeping in silk pajamas. It's very easy to do it when you're sleeping on a cot. That reality of once you start reaping the benefits, you start to lose the drive and the hunger. I'm so self-aware of that, it's crazy. And I haven't reaped the benefit. I'm poor as fuck. Like, I'm trying to build here. I'm a small little podcast. But like, I beat that into my head every day. I beat it into my head every fucking day. There was a story that Bloomberg did in 2013 in like February or March on Samsung. And it was the story I really just fucked that up. But whatever the fucking guy's name is, Tread, if you can pull that up. Lee Cho, this is already racist, I'm sorry. But, like, amazing leader, right, of Samsung. His father died, maybe this is like 88, 89, something like that. Samsung was, and he took over, Samsung was strictly like a parts company. They built like the chip inside your TV and shit like that. And so a couple years in, he decided to go on a world tour of all their locations and just study what's going on. And when he was halfway through this tour, maybe like 3-6 months in, he said, stop. He was in Frankfurt, Germany, and he said, call a meeting of all senior level executives above a certain level. They must be here this weekend at this random fucking hotel I'm at, because I'm going to rent out the full like audience hall or whatever the fuck it is. And if they're not, they don't have a job on Monday. I don't care if their mother's dying. They're going to show up. And this guy called a meeting where he basically just talked at them. There was no like back and forth. He just gave speeches, which is not the best way to do it. But he did it for 3 days, based all day long, based on everything he had seen. So that's where I'll defend him. Like, he was going off of this long study he had been doing. And he said, there's no reason why we shouldn't be making these products ourselves, number one. And number two, we are complacent as a company. From now on, from this day forward, our theme is chaos. Every single day is chaos. We assume that we are losing every bit of ground we've had, and our company is going to end tomorrow if we don't operate that way. And so they then grew into this company that became the biggest like parts or biggest actual like product provider in the world within 20 years. Because that was 1993 when he did that, I think. We can check that. But, they did that operating from chaos. And I was like a senior in high school or something like that when I heard this. And I was like, yo, or freshman in college, something like that. I was like, yo, that's it. That's how you don't lose the drive. You assume you have nothing. And you always operate off that. And so that's what I do. And I don't spend, even when I had at least income, I lived paycheck to paycheck, but I don't spend money on shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just building. And that's how you keep that mentality, I think. It works for me.
Julian Dorey, thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we have like an extra 90 minutes in there. They got fucking deleted.
And I'll take responsibility for that. It's my podcast.
No, it's all good. Shit happens.
Thank you for bearing with us, man. I really appreciate it, truly. So from somebody who is a podcaster, I that's why I was, for people listening, that's why it was so exciting to have you on, man, because I know that you know this grind, and it's one of those things, man, you just don't know it till you do it. And I just think it's like anything. Yeah, 100%. And there's just those things that you don't even think about, man. So when I saw your podcast and I saw your content and I saw, when you told me, I was surprised at 15 to 30 hours for a video. But once I actually not just watched your videos, but I looked at your videos, I examined, I paused them, right? I determined, because I think about what I do and then what that takes. And I respected the sheer quality
Thanks, man.
that you have with your show. So I will link everything below. Your Julian Dorey on Instagram, Trendifier on TikTok.
Yeah, you can write Julian Dorey in there as well. It'll come up.
Cool.
And then I'm Trendifier on YouTube. So Trendifier. And that's really, YouTube has become far and away my main place.
And your videos are fantastic too. If anybody likes Joe Rogan style kind of conversational multi-camera videos, that's the type of stuff you have. Like it's high quality video. It's not Zoom interviews. This is in an actual
all in person
podcast studio. And
I should correct the record though. I misspoke there. YouTube has become my main place for the marketing content. Mm-hmm. It is still not my main place for the episodes. The episodes are Spotify and Apple heavy still. But we now have an audience on YouTube who does consume the episodes there.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, your Instagram account and your TikTok account, all linked below if you're listening and watching right now. Julian, thank you for doing this, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tret. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Tret.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Bobcast. Please don't go anywhere. I do have something for you in the outro. And as always, you know, we're on all platforms, even the ones nobody uses. Julian, thanks for doing this, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Peace! Where were you? Let's take it back a little bit. Before Trendifier happened, that's the name of your podcast. Very successful. But what was your job?